folks. Welcome back to another episode of Legacy of the Monolith, presented by Ramstig. I am Stian.
Hello, I'm Ramnexus.
And this is episode 3. And we've had so much fun doing the first couple. We thought we'd come back and do it again. So, So, how you going there, Ramnexus?
I'm good. I'm going well, thank you. I've just come back to work after a bit of a break over the Christmas season.
Fantastic.
So I'm all refreshed and happy. Well, I was 2 days ago.
And then you went back to work.
Yeah. And how are you?
I'm good. I didn't get a break over the Christmas period because, well, I started a new job and I had to work through it, but it was really quiet. So that was great.
Did you notice the cap that I'm wearing?
Yeah, is that the Springfield isotopes? Or
it is. Wow, very good. I had to ask. It looked kind of familiar. Sorry, I should say this is my son's cap, and he got it last week. It was given to him as a gift. But I had to ask what it was. You worked it out straight away. Very nice.
It just, I don't know, that just plugged that back from the depths of my memory. So,
Is that what that noise was?
Good on your brain. There's steam pouring out of my ears. It's because I've been overworked. I did break the law generally. And in our parlance, breaking the law means you made a purchase, which is quite over the top.
So you're telling me that you made a large purchase in the last week?
A large purchase.
When you say large, is it financially large or physically large?
Both. Like I could not fit it into this room.
Interesting. Oh, I think I know what it is now.
Yeah, well, the hat's a bit of a giveaway.
Yes.
I bought a new car. So
excellent. Please explain. What is it?
Yeah, I've stepped. It feels like I've stepped into the future. I bought myself a BYD Sea Line 6, which for those who aren't car people, it's a plug-in hybrid. So it's like an electric car, but still has a petrol engine that basically is a generator, and it mostly works off 2 electric motors, one for the front and one for the back.
Huh.
So so mostly it'll run off battery, but when it needs it, it'll start the motor up and as a generator and charge the batteries up. It's very different, and you can actually plug it in and charge the battery. So it's not as big a battery as a full size electric car, but with the battery that's in there and the fuel tank and the petrol, it's got a range of about 1,000 k's, which is pretty good.
Wow!
So
really,
yeah.
Wow, that is good. Yeah,
and yeah, it's got a lot of very cool technology. It has a 15-inch media screen in the middle of the console.
Oh my God,
it's just really good for maps, actually, for finding your way around. Voice control for a lot of things. My previous car had virtually no technology. It had no active safety or anything like that, whereas this one's got all the active safety measures. So it's working my way through that.
What's the user interface like? Is it easy enough to understand how things work, or is it a bit of a steep learning curve?
There is a learning curve. I will say that, but it's but the controls are basically similar to a classic car. Yeah, so I'm enjoying learning the car and getting used to technology, and I'm really enjoying driving it. So it's really good. Oh, and I'll show you something. This is the key.
That's not a key. What strange world are we living in?
It's an RFID code. So basically,
right?
you tap it. You tap it on the driver's mirror, and the car will unlock. There's another point where you sort of tap it inside the car and press this up, and then you're off.
So when the car starts, there's no engine sound? Is that right?
No. So it doesn't. So basically the screen lights up and the air conditioning will come on. So
I'm just thinking about audio and like cues that you we're used to having to know that the car's on and when to turn the car off.
It's very interesting. You completely disassociate the action of your foot on the accelerator lever to the engine sounds. It's a 1.5 liter turbo, so
Oh,
and it just has a single gear because it's just basically a generator. So
right.
at high speeds, it can put power directly into the drive shaft for the front wheels. So if you're
So
doing like
you have the two electric and the conventional engine going as
yeah,
well.
I put it into sport mode the other day and I put my foot down and holy heck, okay, yeah,
Very
that's
nice.
it. I see where those 237 kilowatts come from.
Wow, that's a
So
lot. That's really good.
and I mention it because it is kind of tech related stuff. So
Yeah.
I may have some more insight to discuss in future, but I'm not going to go on and on about my car. But
Hmm.
um,
Cool.
what have you been up to, Ramnexus?
I have been consuming a lot of media actually, just because I've been on a break. I made a list.
Please start with your list.
So is it? Sorry, is it 3 weeks since I last? I'm trying to.
I think it's been about 3 weeks since we
Is it
last
three?
recorded. So
So
yeah.
I'm quite proud of myself and what I've achieved in that time. So in the last video, I mentioned that I finished this video game, Horizon Zero Dawn, but I then went on and played the expansion. And although the main game was excellent, the expansion was a bit too samey, a bit too more of the same. And like it's getting to the point you just want to finish it. It's like, oh my god, I just want to get this game. And there's this funny point where you can just tell that this is about to be the big final mission, and you're about to embark on and kill the big bad dude. And just as I did this NPC comes up to me and said, "Oh, can you help me go and kill this other monster that's this?" And it's like, no,
Not the time for a side quest. No.
it was the worst timed side quest offer ever. But it wasn't just random. Like this person was at this location where the final quest starts. It was very odd. It's like, no, go away. I just want to get this done. And it doesn't really explain. Without going too much in the story, it's post apocalypse, and there's a lot of AI, would have been human created AI, and one had almost imprisoned another one. But that's about as much as you're told. You're not really. It doesn't, like, even at the end once you've done everything, it doesn't really explain why Hephaestus, the AI, did this thing. You have to play the second game to find out.
Okay. 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 So kind of cliffhanger, sort of to be continued at the end of game. Okay.
There's a cliffhanger, and then there's this. This was a bit more. Uh, I think I deserve to be told,
Yep.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Tell a complete story.
I also finished off another game called Star Wars Outlaws, which
Oh
is sort of
yes.
an open world Star Wars game where you play as a scoundrel, basically, K-Vess. Uh, and there's no Jedi, there's no lightsabers, but there's a lot of underworld dealings going on. And it was quite good. So, in fact, I think I enjoyed the end of that game more than the end of Horizon Zero Dawn, simply because the story was a bit better explained. The actual ending, the last sort of quarter of the game, was actually quite good. So I finished that as well. So I've technically finished two games.
Oh, that's an achievement.
Uh,
Achievement unlocked.
yeah, yeah, that's right. As I've mentioned, every time I make, probably about once a month, I make a YouTube video on video games, usually technical aspects. But in
Yes.
order to make, say, a 10-minute video, I have to pay probably a week's worth of video games. So I've got another video out, but I spent probably a week at least playing Fallout 4 just to get this video out. It was like how good Fallout 4 looks on each edition of the PlayStation console.
I did watch that
Oh, you did?
when it came out, and that was very interesting. That was I think
It's
possibly one of your better videos.
Thank you.
So
Oh, thank you for saying so. It's
yes.
uh, it was easy to do in the sense that there was a noticeable difference. Um, Sometimes you have to slow things down and zoom things in just to convince people that there's a difference. But this was the improvement was pretty there. But
Yeah.
So after I played those games and after I made that video, I kind of didn't want to play video games much anymore. Just temporarily have a. So in part of the last episode, which didn't end up in the final cut, you mentioned that you were likely to sit down and watch some Andor, some of the Star Wars Andor series.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, yeah, that's good because I really like Andor, and I've seen it. I saw it when it came out on Disney Plus, and then I bought this.
Yeah, just hold it up the camera so everyone listening on the podcast can see it.
So what I'm doing is holding up the steelbook to Star Wars Andor, which is the 4K version. I forgot that there are 12 episodes. For most of the Star Wars series, there are about 8, but this one has a full 12 episodes. Yeah. I watched all 12 episodes since we met last.
And still continue to enjoy it?
It was excellent. It was the quality of the dialogue, the tension that it. I don't know if I have the best words to describe it, but just the pacing. Like sometimes you're thinking, gee, this is a bit slow. What's going on? And then you realize it's just preparation. It's just that moment. Not that I know how to ski, but I can imagine that you're at the top of a hill, just about to slide down the hill. Like, is that quiet moment? And that's kind of what happened 2 or 3 times in it.
Yeah, it's I've also been watching it again. I'm probably
you have
about halfway through, and it's like the dialogue is very well written.
It is
really, really, really like very un-Star Wars like. But
and it doesn't hold your hand like most Star Wars is. Not either written for kids or for a younger audience, or it's supposed to be popcorn fodder. And none of that is a criticism. I love that about Star Wars. But this is written by the writers have written some very serious espionage shows in the past, and it shows, and you can tell because the quality of the writing and the pacing. I think one of the good things is there's no real good person, there's no real bad person. Even Andor himself, spoiler for the first 5 minutes of the show, he starts off by killing 2 people. It could be argued it's self-defense, but for the second guy particularly, that was a deliberate act,
and also let's mention the fact that the very first place that Andor goes to is a brothel. The first time we've seen anything like that in the Star Wars universe. Yeah, so that's true. Apparently people in the Star Wars universe do have sex. So that's right. That's pretty well. I presume that's what they're doing.
I haven't actually seen it, but
sit down and hold hands. But
I've also heard that it's the first time in Star Wars that someone has smoked. Having said that, there is that scene in Star Wars Episode 2 where the young Aussie guy offers death sticks to Obi-Wan. Yeah. I can't remember if he's smoking at that point, but the implication is
I think there was definitely shots of people smoking without having to go back, and I've got a visual memory of someone holding something up. So but certainly in recent years, yes. Yeah, if you got anything else on the list that you want to address?
So Andor was excellent. If you haven't seen it, I recommend watching it. There are criticisms that it's very human centric. There are not a lot of aliens, which are typical a lot of Star Wars. But there are some, and there are some droids. But it's it wouldn't have changed the story if they were there or not. So I think it was fine without it. A movie that I watched a couple of months ago was The Shining, and I quite enjoyed it. I haven't seen it for ages, but it's based on Stephen King's book. But it was the final movie version was had some significant alterations to what was in the book, apparently. But did you know that they've made a sequel to it?
No, I did not.
Yeah, and Ewan McGregor is the protagonist, plays the main character. In fact, he plays the adult version of the boy from the first movie.
Right.
And
okay,
I haven't read the book, but I understand from comments online some of the differences between the book and the movie. And this sequel brings together both quite well. So it explains the shining ability a bit better. It was good. It was good. It could have easily been so bad, but it wasn't so bad. It was good. I wouldn't say it was excellent, but it was good. Yeah.
I'm thinking about The Shining. It's one of those movies that even if you haven't seen it, you kind of know a bit about it
Mm.
because there's so many scenes from it in popular culture
Yeah.
consciousness. You know,
I
the
I
creep, the
always think
creep.
of The Simpsons, and
Yeah,
they called it the shinning.
yeah, the shitting. Yeah, they said the shitting. The creepy twin girls, the blood
Yes.
pouring out of the elevator. You
Yeah.
know, the
Uh,
ballroom scene and that sort of thing. Yeah.
I forgot to mention that the sequel is called Doctor Sleep.
Do you
Yeah.
know when that was made?
It was in the last 5 years. Um, I watched it on a television service, but apparently there is an extended version released on Blu-ray. But it it was good. It didn't seem incomplete. It was the version I watched was fine. I think in the last episode, or maybe the episode before, I said I was also going to watch a movie that I've had on Blu-ray for ages, which is science fiction. It's called The Postman.
Oh, Kevin Costner.
Yeah. So I watched it so
Yeah.
you don't have to.
Okay. Thank you.
Nobody ever has to watch this movie again.
I,
It was
I have I sat down the other day and I wrote out a list of movies that I potentially would like to talk about at some point. I think I've got about 30 odd.
oh right.
Postman is not one of them.
Yeah, I was going to say if it is, just feel free to put a line through it. It is the underlying premise is great. Post, I think it's an environmental catastrophe. Um,
Dare I say, Postman apocalypse?
yes, don't say that. I'd say very good, but it wasn't. It was. I know what you're saying, but the underlying premise from the book of the same name is that society rebuilds because different isolated communities start talking to each other, and the means by which they do that is by postmen. You know what the really embarrassing thing is? So about 2 years ago, I went on a bit of a bender and bought all these Blu-rays that I wanted to watch but could not find them in any streaming service that I'd subscribed to. So I made a list, and over the course of a year during COVID, I think I bought quite a lot, including the Postman. So I've actually bought it. I actually got it on Blu-ray.
You chose to buy this movie. So, serious question. Was it a good underlying story, just badly executed? Or is it just not a good story?
I think I won't say it was a good story. It was a good premise. Like the actual
Okay.
premise at the core of it was good, and my guess is the book is probably good because the author has said it's mainly about community and building communities from isolated communities to linking them up to rebuilding society, which is a good idea. It was just done so badly. Single note, bad guys versus good guys. It was unbelievable and very rah rah pro American. It just didn't need that.
Interesting. Okay. That's all we need to talk. That's all we need to ever say about the Postman ever again. Fantastic.
And I watched a couple of King Kong, a couple of Godzilla movies just for the fun of it. And you know, they're good turn your brain off kind of.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
the quality of the special effects in the most recent one, where they completely destroy the Pyramid of Giza, just completely trashed. Basically, the whole point is humans and your civilization is meaningless to Godzilla. He's not there to protect you; he's here to protect the planet. So,
Godzilla is not our friend.
so that was me. What have you been doing? What have you been watching? What have you been consuming?
As mentioned, I've been working my way through Andor again for it's about the third time actually. I've
Is that
watched it.
right?
Yeah. Watching it with my partner who hadn't seen it before, so she's a sci-fi and Star Wars fan, so
Mm-hmm.
she's been enjoying it.
Good.
Um,
Right.
so yeah, I think we're about halfway through. So we had the big heist scene, and we had the um, and perhaps we'll talk about Andor in more detail at a later
Yeah, we
point.
could talk a
But
lot about it. There's a lot of it to talk
yeah,
about, I guess.
yeah. So
That's
let's perhaps do that in more detail. Perhaps in preparation for season 2, which is coming out in about April, I believe. So look forward to that. And from the sublime to the ridiculous, I've also been watching Skeleton Crew, working my way through that. I think we've got one episode left to come out, and which is basically Goonies in space. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a lot of fun. Don't take it too seriously. Jude Law's great.
Isn't it? Right. I haven't watched any more of it, so
No, Jude Law's great. It's like this story sort of, it develops, it moves along a bit. It probably would have been great as a movie, the concept. I kind of feel like that it's been stretched out to make an 8 episode series. Probably, you could probably edit it down to like a 2.5 hour movie quite easily. So,
that's interesting.
It's
that does happen sometimes.
the series Obi-Wan. Someone actually had done a fan edit.
Oh, right.
And edited it down to like about 2 hours. Been watching Silo as well. Silo is kicking along. Again, I've seen the penultimate episode of season 2. So that's actually got quite exciting on the second last episode. So again, perhaps something to talk about at a later point, but I've been very much enjoying that. I've been watching the Harry Potter movies.
Oh, I've heard of these. Yes, I've heard.
And now that you think about, the last one came out like more than 10 years, like 2012 or something like that.
Right.
And you think, oh, geez, wow.
Yeah.
Deathly Hallows Part 1 is very dark. It's the Empire Strikes Back of the Harry Potter universe. It does get very dark indeed. So, but yeah, it'll be good. And the other thing I want to mention is the Wallace and Gromit movie, which is out on Netflix and then on BBC iPlayer for those in the UK. Hello to anyone in the UK listening. As Aussies, we do get most of the humour of Wallace and Gromit because we've seen enough British television at the time, and we all have British ancestry. Well, not all of us, but many of us do. And I absolutely love it. And the thing about Wallace and Gromit is a lot of it is actually science fiction. If you think about it, I mean,
yes. Okay.
He went to the moon. He built a rocket and flew to the moon.
That's how it all started, isn't it?
Okay, that's how it started.
Yes.
A grandeur, and in the wrong trousers, he built a pair of robotic trousers.
It's a cybernetic extension.
It's a cybernetic experiment. I mean, that's pretty sci-fi. And in the current movie, it's all about artificial intelligence and robots and gnomes in particular, which is really exciting because we know how much you love.
Yeah. So I have an aversion to gnomes, and it's come about from my young days of playing Dungeons and Dragons, and then one of the editions of D&D brought out gnomes, and I remember thinking, we've got halflings, we've got dwarves. What purpose were gnomes serving? And the implication was that they were just there to annoy me, and that has actually proved to be the case. They're just they're as annoying as they are in the show.
Annoying. They're awesome. They're amazing. Fantastic. They're great tinkerers. They're usually good with technology. They wear funny hats.
Yeah, I really like the fact that it wasn't, and it's from The Simpsons as well, where you get the doll and I see your problem. You've got it set to evil, and he kicks it over to good. But in Wallace and Gromit, there isn't 2 choices. It's like a 6 or 7 choices.
Yeah, there are multiple choices. Yes.
I thought, why did Wallace program that? Anyway, I was probably overthinking.
Look, he wanted to be prepared for any potential contingency. He was looking to make money, and I think he wanted perhaps to sell them to the military. I think that's kind of, it's not ever spoken of, but I'm pretty sure that's what he intended. Like, gnomes in khaki green, Norbits.
That could kind of work. I think one of the bits that I laughed out loud the most was when his morning routine mechanism failed, and you got naked Wallace just going on the transparent plastic tubing as part of his morning routine. And it's a scene that no one really wants to see, but even if you had your eyes closed and you heard the noise, you would know exactly what was happening then at that point.
Yeah, that was very special. That was very special. You mentioned your recent YouTube video. My most recent YouTube video has also been released, and that's the video of my visit to the Kennedy Space Center visitor complex. That popped up since the last time we recorded or published this video. So
Yes, true.
so yeah, get out. There'll be a link somewhere. So
We'll put a
get out
link,
and
in. I enjoyed it. I have watched it actually, and I enjoyed it because it really you feel like I'm visiting, like because you explained it all, and you had an issue with your ticket, and it explained it's the sort of thing that actually happens. And you go into this other building, and there's no one there, and you start to think, well, should I actually be here? Like that, and that's what happens as well in the real, And so, but yeah, my big criticism is that you mislabeled the Apollo diorama. That's what you called it, a diorama, but actually that's the set that was used to film the moon landing. You realize that, of course. Just saying, that's what I read somewhere. Some guy online told me that. Is that not true? No? Okay. Okay. And what else do we have?
and that's pretty much it for what stuff that we looked at and watched and wanted to discuss. So perhaps let's have a little moment for us to stretch our legs, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about our movie of the episode. Well, I say movie of the week, but we're not recording these weekly. But it's when we can sort of swing it between the two of us.
It just rolls off the tongue. Movie of the week.
Movie of the week. Before we get on to discussing the movie of this episode, you will remember the previous episode I had the emergency backup fluffy personality. I've got another one for this week.
Let's just go through that name again. The backup fluffy
fluffy personality.
So just for those who can't see, my brother is holding up a weird looking teddy bear that has the biggest eyebrows any teddy bear I've seen has. But because he has a ring light, it reflects in his very large eyes and they look like pupils.
And then, but the thing is, he's got a trick.
I know.
Yeah.
There's a button pressed and the teddy bear just got real angry and showed his teeth. That was good. Sorry, that's a video joke, but it was very funny.
You look at it from a certain angle. Like if you look at it from kind of, it just looks very sad and depressed.
Yes, that's true.
It does. And then he's like
sad. He can't defend himself. Oh my God, there he is. Oh my God.
The morning murder bear. So yeah, that's just so we don't go overboard with the cuteness. Our movie of this episode is the 1986 production of Highlander, he says, holding up his Blu-ray copy. Dun, dun, dun.
It's very nice.
Yes.
Excellent.
This is a movie that we watched a lot in our youth, didn't we? True. I think we probably rented it multiple times from the local video library. On good old VHS.
I was just about to say, and it would have been on tape, not on disc. So you watched it recently, but how long prior to that did you watch it?
We watched it about 5 years ago when I actually bought that disc.
Right. So it wasn't on any of the streaming services that I've subscribed to.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So I could have just laid awake in a dark room and recounted the entire movie since I've seen it so many times to myself. But I actually have this. It's show and tell, great for podcast. This is.
It's another freaking steelbook.
It is a steelbook. In fact, this one might actually be steel. I bought this secondhand in Toronto.
Okay.
20 years ago. So when I bought it, it was secondhand, and it's called the Immortal Edition of Highlander. Okay. It's the same movie.
Yeah.
But it's a DVD. It's Region 1, and it's NTSC. So it's lower resolution than here are PAL videos. But that's the only copy that I have of it.
Well, having said that, because this Blu-ray, it says Classics Remastered, the 30th anniversary edition. If they remastered it, they did a really crappy job.
Oh, is that right?
because it does not look great.
Oh, I
It
see.
looks like a really old cheap film. It does not look sharp and crisp and clean. So I don't know. I think we talked a little bit about the scanning of movies, but yeah, it doesn't look great. The sound is not great, except for the Queen music.
Mm.
Perhaps the movie goes for 1 hour and 56 minutes.
Yep, exactly the same as mine then. So we saw the same version. I was about to say yours would be better quality, but it doesn't sound like it was necessarily. I saw this at the cinema, I remember.
Yes, same.
I would have been a teenager, and I do remember it's one of the few times, I hate doing this, but I was late. So, well, I wasn't, no, correction, I wasn't late. I walked into the cinema with Sean Connery doing the opening
Okay.
reading.
Okay.
So it was right at the start,
So
but
right at the very start.
I felt guilty and grumpy at the same time because I like to get to movies early. But and I don't like disturbing people. But yes, I do remember that quite clearly. So how did it go for you on a rerun? Does it feel aged?
Yeah. Which is a pity because I absolutely love this movie for so long. And I'll go back and watch it now, and I go, it just doesn't hold up for a lot of reasons. Let's perhaps talk about the good stuff first.
Okay. I'm not gonna go for the jugular too much, but
No. Let's talk about what we like. Let's talk about what's good about the movie, about what's great about the movie, what made it so memorable. And I think the first thing you have to talk about is are the songs by Queen
yeah,
in the movie.
yeah.
Masters of here we are, Masters of the Universe.
I-
Brilliant music that stands out.
Apparently, they were just going to do the title, but were given the opportunity to do they sat in and watched an early draft of the movie, and they really, really liked it. So they said, "No, we're going to do a bunch," and I think they ended up contributing six songs at least to the
Yeah, I think that's about
6 or
right.
7.
Yeah, so not quite
Uh,
a whole album, but yeah, definitely
mm.
a significant. I think there was a greatest hits album of theirs that came out at the time, and I think the, all the Highlander songs ended up on
Well, I can
that
I
thing.
can talk to this because when I was a teenager, I owned. So they didn't release it as the soundtrack to the movie. They Queen just released an album called "It's a Kind of Magic," and
Um,
6 of the songs in it, 6 of 10 songs or whatever, were from the movie, but there were 3 or 4 that weren't anything to do with the movie. So for them, in a sense, it was just another album, but it just happened to be linked to the movie as well.
okay, cool.
Um, I owned it on audio
The good old days.
with it in my Walkman, listening to it.
I know it's so 80s cliche, but it's true.
Yeah,
That's how we used to live in the pre-digital days. So
yeah.
yeah,
So it was good.
it's true, kids. That's exactly how things were. Queen is still great. Queen music still stands up. It's still very original, and uh, perhaps the best scene of the whole movie, the most emotive scene is the "Who Wants to Live Forever" sequence, where
Yeah, yeah,
um, uh,
yeah.
McLeod is with his wife Heather, and she ages as he stays the same age, and eventually she sort of passes away as they're playing as Queen are singing "Who Wants to Live Forever" with strings and everything happening. It's I
It,
may have shed a little tear.
yeah, I got to say, it worked really well. Apparently, that was written um, because it wasn't written by Freddie Mercury, that piece, but one of the other band members who wrote that song was
Mhm.
so touched by the scene, he wanted to
Yeah,
make a suitable piece of music, and it couldn't have been better. Like, it was just fantastic. I
yeah,
do like the effect that Connor, obviously, not only has he not aged, he's wearing exactly the same colours clothing. So you're sort of tricked to thinking, oh, this is just like a couple of weeks later. And then you see his body had that.
deliberately tricking you into thinking, oh yeah, this is just a little bit later. No, it's quite a lot later. Um, and the thing is, poor Heather, uh, being the 1500, she was probably only in her 40s when she died.
Yeah,
Probably,
they didn't have, yeah, there were
yeah,
lot of exposure to the elements kind of.
yeah, and probably dysentery or something like that, or something terrible. collar, or
We're bad. We're bad.
So yeah, so because you got to look at her. You look at her. She's made up to look older, but you're thinking you don't look really, really old. A bit of makeup, a bit of the hairdo. You'd be she's probably about 40. And McLeod's probably like supposed to be like mid-20s.
Yeah, mid-20s.
So
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's that's a brilliant piece. That's a brilliant sequence. Just 1 year of love is better than a lifetime alone. Please cut it out. Please edit.
Sorry.
Please.
I literally will have to cut that out. So I was just singing the song, but I'm having to cut it out. Thanks, YouTube.
I mean, for copyright reasons,
that's the only reason.
That's the
it's
only
not because
reason.
you've just started bleeding from the ears or anything. No.
Please continue. Yeah, one of the other great things I love about this movie is Clancy Brown as the Kurgan.
Yeah.
He kind of steals the movie, really.
He has a lot of presence, doesn't he?
He has so much physical presence, He really does. And kind of like Cloud is a bit of a jerk. He's not an intrinsically good person.
No, it's true. I agree with that.
I don't, I mean, he lived his life. He's a survivor, obviously. He lived his extended life, but yeah.
So you like the Kurgan. What was your favourite scene with the Kurgan in it?
When he hijacks the car, and he with the elderly couple, and he literally sort of pulls the old man out of the driver's seat by the collar, gets in while the old lady is sitting there in the passenger seat.
Yes,
and he literally turns and looks at her and goes, and like he's a complete ass. He really is. He's not a nice person at all, but he's just such a good character. He just about steals the movie.
Do you remember what the dad says after the Kurgan steals the car and drives off with it? He doesn't say, "Oh my God, that's my wife." He says, "Where are you going with my car?"
Yeah.
Not that your wife is in the car, but more worried about the car than your wife.
The other line that I love from him is when he checks into the hotel room, and they send the prostitute up to he orders a prostitute, and she rocks up at the door and she says, "Hi, I'm Candy," and he says, "Oh, of course you are. Of course you are." He's not a nice person by any means, but he's just such a fun character. One of his other favorite lines is when they're in the church, and he goes up to the priest asking to keep quiet. It's a place of worship. People are trying to pray, and he says to the priest, "Father, forgive me, for I am a worm," and then licks his hand.
Yes, the priest says, "Oh, he loves us all." The Kurgan says, "And that will be his undoing." And the look on the face of the priest, like he's giving critique, he's criticizing God, which he could probably do. Actually,
he's had a long time to think about it as well.
That's right. It was actually quite. There's no way the priest could know that, but yeah.
A couple of things that I really love about the movie is one of the opening shots of the movie where they have the sweeping shot across the arena on Madison Square Garden during the wrestling to focus on Christopher Lambert as McLeod, or Nash as he is known in the 1980s. Sitting there obviously waiting to have this fight with the Persian guy in the car park later on. So, but yeah, everyone else is jumping up and down and screaming, and he's just sitting there very sullen, just waiting.
I remember when I was young and I thought, like, he looks bored. He's not engaged. So I remember thinking, is it just that he's been around, he's been alive for too long and things like this just don't entertain him, excite him anymore?
I mean, he's fought in Highland clan wars. He's been a soldier, so ritualistic violence is boring to him because he's fought real battles. He literally died in battle, so like, yeah. And of course, wrestling is not going to be of interest to him because it's fake. And
It's fake. Yes, it's apparently it was originally supposed to be hockey or ice hockey, as we call it in Australia. And if you've ever been or seen a hockey game, you know that the referees do allow them a little bit
yeah,
of
bit of
leeway
leniency. Yeah,
before they'll step if the opposition starts getting a bit physical with each other, which is it's almost expected at the point at which the ref steps in is usually very nuanced and very well defined. But that was supposed to be what it was about, and there was supposed to be one of those violent scenes that humans have this violent nature. That the hockey league eventually said no and said no, you can't use hockey because they realized that in the movie they were going to focus on the violence in hockey and not portray it in its best light. So it was wrestling instead. But it actually makes.
I think wrestling worked better for
I think it
the
did.
movie.
Yeah.
One of the aspects of the movie that I do love is the Scottish scenery. A lot of it's filmed on location, and it's just utterly beautiful. It really is.
So between 1986 it came out?
86. Yeah, the
So
movie's set in 1985, but the film was released in 86.
right, okay.
So they actually reference the year in the movie. So
right.
yeah,
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
I think one of the cops does, or the detective does.
Well, one of the things I really liked about it was the fact that what you have are these very powerful human-like creatures, and this concept it's been done many times before with vampires, and it's been done with werewolves and or with mutants, and there's a few other things, but in this one, it actually in they don't explain the background to it. A lot of times with these movies, they really go into detail trying to explain and justify the reason for why this immortal came to be immortal, which they did in the second movie. And the second movie is sometimes some people say it's the worst sequel ever made because they do explain it. And it's a very bad explanation, but it shouldn't have. Like the fact that it was not explained actually was better. You know.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
Before I get on to critiques, another point I do want to raise is the character of Brenda, played by Roxanne Hart. She was very good, I thought, because Christopher Lambert, he was great as Colin McLeod, but he's a very one-dimensional character. I won't say actor, but the character is very bland, very straight, very one-dimensional.
That's true. Yeah,
and she sort of bounced in quite well. And the fact that she had a significant interest in medieval swords and sword making, he found that interesting in her as well. So I think she was more interested in getting to know him and where he was from and what his experience was. So she was not all arresting him for murder.
no, that's right.
She had very little interest in that at all. So despite the fact she actually had evidence in the
Yeah,
form
well, that's true.
in the form of the piece of that steel. I did read somewhere because she uses a metal detector and she finds the metal detector with the piece of metal with the metal detector, and the argument was that a metal detector would not have worked because every pillar of concrete has steel bars in it anyway, which would have set the metal detector off. So
Rebar.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point actually.
she could have been just a good, she could have just been a good forensic scientist who with good powers of observation and had a look there. So, but that's a slightly that is definitely a nitpicky point.
So in an earlier version of the draft, she doesn't work for the police. She actually does work at the Met. So because in the book, it actually, I think it says in the back of the book that she does work at the Met, like it, or this. I know she sort of lies and says she works at the Met and all the rest of it, but in the original script, she does work at the Met, and she wrote that book that he has that he shows her when she was working as a scientist there, and she liaises with the police. That's how it originally. I think that kind of would work better because she doesn't really come across as a forensic. I don't know.
Yeah, she's not very policey.
No.
Yeah, she's much more interested in the actual forensic side of things and the actual crime solving side of things. Like she's like the anti-Dexter. If I could put it that way.
Yes.
Um, but McLeod's he's a very laid back character because again he's lived a long life. He's smart. He knows people. He knows how to read people. So he gets arrested. He's not at all fussed about the fact that he's arrested, and they know they can't pin anything on him. And I do like the line where the cop says, "You talk funny, Nash. Where are you from?" And he says, "Lots of different places,"
Mm.
and a very distinct accent. So
Uh,
because he's French, I believe.
well, the actor's French, and the character spent a lot of time visiting lots of different parts of the world.
I do like the Marine who's driving around New York with a carload full of guns. And I love his T-shirt with "Hey Moscow," with the bombs falling, and that kind of really dates the what it was like in the 1980s, about the political sort of thing, because it was still very much the Soviet Union were the big bad, and
Yeah.
um,
I always recall that the fact that he basically imposed himself in the fight. So he sees the Kurgan fight, and
yes,
he basically imposes himself where no one else would. And it's just mainly because what was he trying to do? Clean up the streets? Is that what he's doing? Or is he?
yeah, something like that. Yeah, I think he's
Yeah.
trying. It's like being a crime-fighting vigilante.
Mm.
I just thought he was an interesting character and he was the one who tells the cops about what happened at the end of the fight
Mm.
when the body's lifting up and the gaining of the power, and very interesting from a filmmaking perspective because they cut away and he's behind glass and you can't see him, you can't hear him saying anything, but he's
Oh, that's
gesturing
true.
and you're getting the reaction of the cops. So,
Mm.
but that was nicely done. That was well done.
Yeah,
Um,
because you know exactly. Yes, that's very true. You know what he's saying without
yeah.
having to hear him say the
Yeah, because
words.
we've seen it, so we know what he's saying. Oh yes, one of the funny bits is McLeod's first battle. He's going out in the fight for the first time, and the Kurgan has told the other clansmen, the opposing clansmen, leave McLeod alone. He's mine. And like everyone's leaving him. No one's
Yeah.
coming to you.
Why
He's
would they
like,
fight me?
fight me down. And after the car park scene, because he hides his sword. Then he
Mm.
goes back later to recover it, and then you see him take it home, and then he later is sharpening it with the stone, and you get a close look, and you can actually see that it's actually not perfect at all. It's been chipped and used and well used, And I
Mm.
thought, I don't know how deliberate that was, but it looks like a sword that's seen a lot of action.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if that was a production design choice, well done, I'm
Mm.
going to say.
There's a fine detail that, yeah. So what does incompetent mean? What does baffled mean?
That was really good. It
That
was
was
like,
well
yeah,
done.
the guy with the street stole the food van on the
Yeah.
street. Now, interesting because it was made in '85. This is pre CGI, so everything is practical effects. So there's quite a bit of use of rotoscoping
Mm.
for where they sort of drawing ghostly images or lines of energy and that sort of stuff. And that was kind of nicely done. That would have been like state of the art at the time.
Yeah,
Um,
that was painted on basically, wasn't it?
yeah,
Is that right? Yeah.
it looks a bit twee now compared to our current standards where we're used to um, CGI,
Mm.
more high resolution, sophisticated CGI. But for the time, it was, pretty good. Pretty good. I mean, this is what we went back. We watched it multiple times as kids, or teenagers. Um, there is one point. Speaking of practical effects, there is one point um, in his after he beats the Kurgan in the final fight, and he raises up. There's one point you can clearly see the wires holding him up.
Yes. Yeah, I was thinking that's true.
Yeah, nowadays they would go and they would digitally clean that up, so they wouldn't worry about
I think it has been. I think there is a version where they've
yeah.
cleaned it up, but my version certainly didn't have that, and yours doesn't have it. There's one thing I noticed that I had never seen before, and it might be I was cued to it reading up about it prior to rewatching it. But every time Russell Nash senses another immortal nearby, there's a sound. There's a specific
Uh,
sound. It's it's almost a bit too subtle. Like I've never noticed it before, but it does actually play. And even so every time that they're supposed to be able to sense each other's presence, and that it is accompanied by a sound, which I've never really noticed before. But I quite like that idea. Yes.
That's a bit subtle. I hadn't really picked up, but that would make sense. That they're aware of each other's presence. Then they know when another one of them is one of the immortals is close. So
Yeah,
that
even
would
even when he's at the wrestling, when he opens his eyes, it's because he senses that Fazil is downstairs. That's got to help cut down the numbers. If you can, like, not only do you know there's another one around, but you know he's sort of whereabouts he is. And it must be true because somehow the Kurgan knows that Connor McLeod is an immortal, even before he's died the first time.
He knows before McLeod knows himself.
Yeah, which is, and again, they don't explain it. Like, and that's not a bad thing. I kind of like this idea that they just don't need to explain all this stuff. They just went through it. Another thing they don't explain is what actually happens when they experience the quickening, when they sort of absorb the power of the others. So I don't know if you ever watched it, but there was a television series.
Yes, there was, wasn't there?
There's like 6 seasons. I didn't watch all of it, but it varied. The quality varied, but some of it was actually quite good. But one of the things it did do is explained what happened. At least one of the things that happens is that you actually gain a lot of the memories of the person that you absorb. I'm not sure if that means you also absorb the memories of the people that they killed. I'm not sure if it's cumulative, but
come up, Benny Jesuit, and you kind of, you kill them, you get their energy and their life essence. Perhaps that's what keeps you going. A couple of things I'll talk about for the movie. There's a lot of breaking glass. As a very thematic thing. There's a lot of sequences with breaking glass. Obviously the big fight with the Kurgan at the end. They're in this big warehouse beneath the Silver Cup sign, which I did not realize is a real place and a real sign until they actually went to New York and go, oh, that's real. I just thought it was in a thing for the movie. It's a real place. So, there's a lot of sequence of glass breaking. The first fight in the car park underneath the wrestling. There's a lot of cars with broken windows and so forth. It's a breaking glass seems a bit thematic. When the Kurgan wins the battle, I think all the glass and windows all shatters around him in the alleyway there.
Yeah, that's right. True.
Yeah, so that's definitely a thing that was, there's a design choice. Okay, so it just is a way of showing the force of the energy that's being released.
Yeah.
One thing I kind of have a bit of problem with is every female character in there. Basically, almost every female character ends up just screaming their head off at some point. As being a pathetic female that needs to be rescued.
80s action movie.
Yes, very 80s action movie, and that's sort of dated a bit. But poor Heather, when the Kurgan is fighting Ramirez, all she just does is sit back and screams. The old lady in the car, obviously, when she gets taken for a joyride by the Kurgan.
To be fair, I'd probably yell a scream too if it was me.
I mean, look, true, but Brenda has a bit of screaming as well, but she also does help McLeod in the final battle against the Kurgan.
She screams, but she also faints. So she does a double stereotype. She actually faints in the car like she's just overwhelmed.
But she does give him a hand in the end. So, and McLeod says, I took it, sort of thing. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
So that's kind of a bit dated. Like you wouldn't make a movie quite like that these days. What thing the movie does, it does a lot of telling and not showing. So there's a lot of Ramirez talking to McLeod at the beginning about what it's like to be an immortal and stuff like that. So he's just there telling him this stuff. They don't show us through scenes, through actions and stuff like that.
That would have been better.
And even at the end, when Cloud becomes the one and takes the prize. It's a bit vague what the prize actually is. I mean, was it the prize just a nice picnic with Heather in the Scottish Highlands somewhere? You know, there, there had to be more to it than that. And they do talk a bit about it, but yet that's just gone straight out of my head because they talk about what the prize is, but
Yeah, true.
they don't they don't show you. So
It's interesting because they established that flashbacks are a thing. You know, they do a lot of flashbacks. I think they do it at one point. They do a flashback in a flashback. Uh, so it would have made sense when Ramirez is discussing what it means to be an immortal and his life, that he had flashbacks of him. I suppose, you know, it was logistics was the reason it didn't happen because they only had Sean Connery for so long and all the rest of it. But it would have been better to show him doing some of those things. Uh, yes, I agree, definitely.
but look, it's still a fun movie. It was still worth digging out the disc and slapping it in the player and watching it.
I enjoyed it, partly because it really gets the dopamine hit because you're listening to lines that you've been hearing since I was a teenager,
Yeah.
basically.
It's like focus on the good stuff and don't worry so much about the stuff that's a bit problematic or not great. The ADR they didn't seem to sync very well. I don't think the ADR was very convincing, and which is kind of bad because I'm finding myself. There was a sequence when they're going out to battle, and you can hear the voices and sound effects. I'm thinking that doesn't sound good. That's all just someone in the studio with coconuts and horse noises and stuff like that. It wasn't.
Actually, yeah, I
Wasn't
did
convinced.
notice that there was one scene. I think it's when Russell Nash goes over to Rachel's house for the dinner, and I remember thinking, "Oh my god, that actually sounds like audio from the scene." Whereas it's not a voiceover, after the fact, just because it synced up better and it sounded at the right volume and everything sounded correct. It was noticeable because it was normal and correct, whereas often it wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was an ambitious movie at the time, probably with whether I'm not sure what the budget restraints were or anything like that, because it was made by a guy called Russell Mulcahy, an Aussie guy, who'd made one other previous motion picture about a wild pig in outback Australia called Razorback. Um, uh, and he'd done a lot of music videos and TV commercials.
No shit.
So yeah, he was fairly new to making motion pictures.
But you could tell that he'd done a lot of music videos.
Yeah, just a lot of sequences. You go, oh, this is straight out of an 80s music video.
There's a great scene when the Kurgan is walking out of his hotel room. He comes down the elevator, and they use, and they do this a few times. He uses a wide angle lens, and when the Kurgan and McLeod first fight in New York, when Rachel's there, there's a scene where McLeod's running. He's running away from the Kurgan, and they use this wide scene to really accentuate the speed with which he's going. They do that quite a few times. I think that's definitely a music video effect that he was bringing to it. What I found interesting was that Connor McLeod was there was something about him which I won't say young men wanted to be, but it was something that young men found it appealing, his character appealing. And I'm still not 100% sure what it was, but it could be that he had power that he didn't ask for and he didn't earn. He just got it. But he was humble. He didn't abuse the power. And so me and many other people watching the movie, especially on repeat runs, would see his action and think, oh, that's really cool. And then when I watched it this time, I noticed for the first time, he was really creepy, actually, like really full on red flag creepy when he follows Rachel into the bar and starts talking to her. He doesn't know anything about her. He doesn't even know.
At that point, no.
Like it's almost like a scene has been missed because it's like he's just so weird that, and then 5 minutes later, she follows him and witnesses him fighting the Kurgan, and he yells at her and says, "You shouldn't be following me." It's like, dude, he would do exactly the same thing to her. It was, I didn't think it was a bad thing at the time, but now I look back and think, no, that's not okay behavior. That was, a bit dodgy.
What happens is when you watch a movie, sometimes you put yourself into the role of which character would I be? Which character can I relate to? And I think as younger adults or teenagers, I think we could sort of we were relating to that to McLeod, and also using the values of the time as well, remembering that. And here we are, like 30 years later, 40 years later, and we're older chaps, and values in society have changed, and our personal values have probably changed. And it's interesting to go back and watch that movie that was so important to us as young men, and realize it doesn't quite hit the same way with us anymore. Still worth the watch, but watch it, particularly if you're a younger person than us and you haven't watched Highlander. Bear all this in mind when you watch it. It is a cult classic for a very good reason, and definitely worth watching, if only to sort of fill in those holes in kind of pop culture.
Yeah, it is interesting, but it is because at the time when you're, I won't say idolizing them, but when you decide, oh yeah, I really like that. And I was watching videos on YouTube about a guy explaining, like when he was young, they used to literally dress as the Highlander when they were at college and stuff, and like people really admired him. It's like, okay, don't replicate everything he does, because he does some stuff which, although everyone acknowledges is not acceptable today, like following a woman into a bar. Actually, even at the time, it wasn't acceptable, and she calls him out on it.
Yeah, she calls him out on it. Yeah, no, Brenda's a great character.
It's just really good. She is quite brave, actually, following him as well afterwards.
And she's the one who figures out his secret, so she's highly intelligent, highly intelligent person. She figures him out. She calls him on it.
I always, in fact, I was watching it, and they did the handwriting recognition test to see for the signature. But what I was thinking was the guy who did that. He said, I was up all night doing this. I thought, so he knows the secret too. Like, who is this guy? He's never mentioned again, but he actually knows the secret of the immortals now of the Highlands.
Yeah, he pretty much says it straight out to her.
Yeah, he says, what you're talking about is a guy that's been dead for 500 years, which I thought was at least never discussed again. Yeah. Anyway,
it's about time to wrap it up, mate. So, it was fun to go back and watch it again.
And I said this in our very first episode. The criticisms we may have of movies might be how they've changed over time. So we both can easily say we loved the movie at the time, and I still enjoyed watching it. It wasn't cringe-worthy. Yeah, you watch it as a product of its time.
It's there's a remake in the offing, I believe.
It's a rumor of Henry Cavill.
Henry Cavill and Dave Bautista, so which would be interesting. So
if it happens, that's pretty good. Be interesting to see. Because that television series went for 6 years, and then there was another spin-off television series. There was like 5 movies. There's an anime. There was a lot of extra, not necessarily good backstory to it. So there's a lot to work with.
Yeah, it's definitely a story that could be retold again. It's I think I would like to see that happen. It is an intriguing story, and as I said earlier, it does make a difference to vampires and werewolves and all that sort of stuff in the typical horror genre. I mean, I don't really, we don't really think of it as a horror movie. It's kind of, or even science fiction. It is a fantasy movie, but it sort of leans into. Yeah,
it is a fantasy movie, but it's set, well, for the most part, in contemporary times.
Well, I look forward to what we're going to talk about next time, brother. Okay, folks. Well, thanks for joining us. We've loved the chat. I hope you've enjoyed listening to us, and we look forward to catching up with you all next time. This is Steve.
This is Ramnexus.
And bye for now.